Imagine batting for 835 minutes.
Oh, man, that's just right.
That is nearly 14 hours of standing at the crease, facing a 5.5-ounce rock-hard leather sphere that's just, hurtling at your head at over 90 miles an hour.
Yeah, 14 hours of relentless physical exertion, plus the mental calculus of it all.
Exactly. And just the knowledge that a single, millimeter lapse in concentration means you are completely out.
Right. It's arguably the ultimate test of human concentration. I mean, to maintain that level of absolute hyperfocus while literally thousands of people are screaming in the stands.
And world-class fast bowlers are actively trying to take your head off.
Exactly. It requires a psychological makeup that, honestly, very few athletes in history possess.
And that is exactly what we are exploring in this deep dive. We are looking at the life, the mechanics, and the legacy of Rahul Dravid.
The Indian cricketing legend, universally known as the Wall.
The Wall, yeah. And look, even if you aren't tracking the daily scores of the sport, you really need to stick around for this one. Because this isn't just, a recount of cricket statistics.
Far from it.
It is a masterclass in resilience, the mechanics of long-term focus, and really just the quiet power of consistency in a world that just won't stop screaming for attention.
Which is so relevant for all of us today.
Oh, totally. Okay, let's unpack this. In a sports world obsessed with highlight reel slam dunks and instant gratification, Dravid is the guy who is quietly and meticulously building the concrete foundation of the stadium.
That structural analogy is actually crucial to understanding his true value. Because for the Indian national team, he was basically the mechanism that allowed the rest of the lineup to operate with freedom.
Like a safety net.
Right. The flashy, aggressive players could take huge risks precisely because they knew they had this impenetrable failsafe standing at the other end of the pitch.
Right, but to really grasp how a player develops into that kind of failsafe, we have to look at the psychology of a person who actually, prefers to operate in the background.
Which is rare in sports.
Super rare. So think about his international Test debut. This was for India at Lord's in 1996. Literally the cathedral of cricket.
A massive stage.
Right. And the sources note that he played exceptionally well. He scored 95 runs. But he was completely overshadowed by his teammate, Sourav Ganguly.
Yeah, who scored a century and grabbed all the headlines that day.
Right. And we see so many young prodigies debut on the world stage, and they just crave that spotlight. If they are overshadowed, it totally crushes their ego. They overcompensate the next time they go out.
Oh, yeah, they try to force it.
Exactly. So how did Dravid process being sidelined in his own debut? Is it possible that not being the center of attention actually gave him the quiet space he needed to perfect this, impenetrable technique?
What's fascinating here is how his personality completely neutralized that ego trap. Dravid just didn't require the external validation of being the star of the day.
Really?
Yeah, he found his validation purely in the execution of his process. He had this very grounded upbringing. He was born in Indore but moved to Bangalore, and he was heavily supported by a middle-class family.
Okay.
His father actually played local cricket. And that environment, along with his time at St. Joseph's College of Commerce, really instilled this focus on slow, steady improvement rather than, overnight stardom.
So the foundation was poured way before he hit the international stage.
Exactly. We actually saw this trait emerge much earlier, back during his domestic debut for Karnataka in the 1991-92 season. He basically arrived on the scene already possessing this remarkable ability to play incredibly long, patient innings. He just never looked rushed.
But I want to dig into the actual mechanics of that patience, because people often talk about patience in sports as a passive trait.
Right, like just waiting around.
Yeah, like a batter just waiting around for a bad delivery to hit. But the sources suggest Dravid's patience was completely different. It was offensive.
Highly offensive.
So how exactly does patience become a weapon?
Well, think of it as a form of martial arts, where you use the opponent's momentum entirely against them. So, picture a premier fast bowler charging in.
Okay.
That bowler is expending an immense amount of fast-twitch muscle energy, putting maximum physical effort and aggression into every single delivery, trying to intimidate the batter and force an error.
Which works against almost everyone else.
Exactly. But Dravid's response was to just present a dead bat. He would calmly, perfectly defend the ball, dropping it harmlessly at his feet.
Over after over.
Over after over. He wouldn't get frustrated by a low scoring rate. He wouldn't take the bait of a wide delivery. By forcing the bowler to run in again and again for zero reward, He systematically drained their physical stamina, and, he broke their psychological rhythm.
Wow.
He literally used patience to exhaust the opposition, and by doing so, he dictated the entire tempo of the match.
He controlled the game by just refusing to participate in the bowler's chaos.
That's a great way to put it.
That is a brilliant tactical approach, and it clearly worked, right? Because we see the official breakthrough happen in 1997. This was at Eden Gardens against the West Indies.
Yeah, where he scores his maiden Test century.
Right, and he goes from being a highly promising defensive player to just an undeniable core pillar of the national team.
Which transitions us perfectly from how he established his technique to how he actively used it to dismantle opponents across, well, vastly different environments.
Because succeeding in Test cricket isn't just about outlasting the bowler. It's about mitigating the physical environment itself.
Exactly. You're fighting the pitch just as much as the opposing team.
So let's talk about those mechanics. The sources universally regard him as one of the greatest Test batsmen in history, and they point heavily to his classical stance and impeccable footwork. How did that specific technical setup allow him to dominate in totally contrasting conditions?
Well, it comes down to balance and the ability to play the ball incredibly late. So, for example, in England, the pitches are green and very seam-friendly.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning the ball moves laterally through the air and it darts off the pitch unpredictably. So to survive that, you have to wait until the absolute last millisecond to commit to a shot.
Right, you can't just lunge at it.
Exactly. And Dravid's technique featured these extremely soft hands and a perfectly still head, allowing him to just watch the swinging ball right onto the bat.
Okay, so that's England, but what about closer to home?
Right. Conversely, on the dusty, spin-friendly pitches of the subcontinent, the ball grips and turns sharply. There you need decisive footwork. You're either striding far forward to smother the spin before it turns, or you're rocking deep into the crease to give yourself time to react.
And he could just switch between those styles.
Yeah, his footwork was so fluid he could transition between these extremes effortlessly.
That's amazing. And the ultimate showcase of that endurance and technique has to be the 2001 Kolkata Test against Australia.
Right, absolute legend.
He scores 180 runs in an innings that is widely considered one of the greatest in Indian cricket history, facing a bowling attack featuring Shane Warne and Glenn McGrath.
Two of the greatest of all time.
Right. In the sweltering heat and humidity of Kolkata for hours on end, the physical and mental toll of that is just staggering to even think about.
And he did it while his team was initially following on, meaning they were facing an almost certain crushing defeat.
Wow.
To maintain the technical precision we just talked about, the soft hands, the decisive footwork, while being severely dehydrated and under immense scoreboard pressure against the best team in the world, it just elevates that innings from a statistical achievement to a monumental feat of human endurance.
Absolutely. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The sources highlight a detail that makes his physical endurance even more mind-boggling.
Oh, the wicket-keeping.
Yes. For a significant portion of his early career, specifically in one-day internationals, he was the team's wicketkeeper.
It's just insane.
That is like the star quarterback also playing every snap on the offensive line.
Yeah, the biomechanical load of doing both is extreme. I mean, as a wicketkeeper, you are executing hundreds of deep squats in a single day.
Hundreds of them.
Hundreds. Your knees, your lower back, your hamstrings, they are all under constant tension. And you are intensely focused on every single delivery, anticipating edges, reacting in fractions of a second.
And then after doing that in the field for 50 overs, you have to take off the pads, completely reset your brain, switch from a reactive mindset to an anticipatory batting mindset.
And walk out to face bowlers who are completely fresh.
Yes. How does a player even sustain that?
Well, they usually don't, which is why true wicketkeeper batsmen who bat in the top order are exceedingly rare in the history of the sport. And for Dravid, you have to remember, it wasn't even his natural primary position.
He was forced into it.
Not forced, but he took on that immense physical burden purely for team balance. Because by keeping wicket, he allowed the team to play an extra specialist batter or bowler.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he internalized the physical suffering so the collective unit could have a strategic advantage. It's the ultimate manifestation of removing ego from your professional life.
That team-first adaptation extended to how he approached different formats, too, because there was a prevalent narrative early in his career that his methodical, slow-burn style was actually a liability in ODIs.
Yes, the critics were very loud about that.
Critics argued he consumed too many deliveries and hurt the team's strike rate. And I want to pose a genuine challenge here. Were the critics entirely wrong? I mean, in those early years, did his defensive mindset actively bottleneck the Indian batting order and high-pressure limited overs chases?
It's a totally fair critique of his earliest ODI appearances. When the required run rate climbs, a team needs boundaries.
Right.
And initially, Dravid did struggle to shift gears because his entire instinctual programming was designed to keep the ball on the ground and eliminate all risk.
So he was a bit of a liability at first.
Briefly, yes. However, this raises an important question. How does a master technician evolve? He didn't suddenly try to become a power hitter. He didn't start trying to slog the ball over the ropes.
He didn't try to be someone he wasn't.
Exactly. Instead, he engineered a way to score quickly using his existing defensive geometry.
Okay, so he essentially hacked the ODI format.
He really did.
Without taking aerial risks, how do you actually maintain a high strike rate?
Through relentless strike rotation and field manipulation,
Yeah.
Dravid realized that a dot ball, a delivery where no run is scored, is the ultimate enemy in an ODI.
Got it.
So he meticulously practiced dropping the ball with soft hands into vacant areas on the offside just to steal quick singles. He mastered the late cut and the leg glance.
Using the bowler speed against them again?
Exactly. Using the fast bowler's own extreme pace to deflect the ball past fielders for boundaries rather than trying to overpower it, he basically became perfectly efficient.
And the numbers validate that evolution completely. I mean, he forms that legendary opening partnership with Ganguly, acting as the perfect anchor while Ganguly attacks.
This is a beautiful contrast.
Yeah. He scores an unbeaten 123 against Bangladesh in 2004. And he plays a highly crucial role in the 2003 World Cup, including a vital century against Sri Lanka during India's run to the final. He proved you literally don't need to be reckless to be destructive in a fast-paced format.
And when you combine that level of technical adaptation, plus the willingness to take on the brutal physical toll of wicket-keeping,
Right.
and just a completely egoless approach to the game, that player naturally evolves into the formal leader of the dressing room.
Right, which brings us to the captaincy. He eventually takes on the captaincy for both the Test and ODI teams. And on paper, the results are fantastic.
Very strong.
Under his leadership, India achieves a historic Test series victory in the West Indies in 2006 and a major ODI series win against Pakistan in 2005.
Huge milestones.
But I want to push back a little on his captaincy style. The sources describe him as calm, composed, and inclusive. But in the ruthless arena of international cricket, especially when touring hostile environments away from home, does a team sometimes need a dictator?
That's the big debate, isn't it?
Yeah. Did his naturally defensive, cautious mindset bleed into his captaincy and perhaps, lack the aggressive killer instinct required to consistently dominate overseas?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of Indian cricket history, you hit on the exact friction point of his tenure. Yes, his cautious nature as a batter did occasionally translate into conservative field placements and defensive declarations as a captain.
It makes sense. That was his whole philosophy.
Exactly. He wasn't the fiery, combative leader that someone like Virat Kohli would later become. And he drew heavy criticism for not putting the boot on the throat of the opposition when India had the advantage.
And managing that criticism, along with the expectations of literally over 1 billion cricket-obsessed fans that had to take a massive toll. We call him the Wall because he was supposedly impenetrable. But eventually, the sheer weight of carrying the team's batting, stepping in as a wicketkeeper and shouldering the captaincy, it did cause structural damage, didn't it? The late career slumps were definitely real.
Oh, absolutely. The pressure was suffocating, and the physical miles on his body were immense. When the younger generation of players began emerging, playing this highly aggressive, modern style of cricket, Dravid's periods of poor form were heavily scrutinized.
People were calling for him to step down, right?
Yeah, there were widespread calls for his immediate retirement. But this is where we really have to redefine what resilience actually looks like in professional sports.
What do you mean?
Well, true resilience isn't some magical, unbroken upward trajectory. True resilience is the systematic, uncomplaining process of rebuilding your technique after a collapse.
Wow. But how did he actually execute that rebuild? Because, a lot of players hit a slump, they get defensive, they blame the pitch, they blame the selectors.
And then they just fade away.
Right. But the sources explicitly state he just focused on improvement. What does that mechanical rebuild even look like for a player who is already a veteran?
It meant stripping his game completely down to the studs and the practice nets. When his reaction times naturally slowed with age, which happens to everyone, causing him to get bowled through the gate, the gap between bat and pad.
Right.
He didn't make excuses. He went to the nets and relentlessly worked on tightening his defensive angles. He adjusted his initial trigger movements. He literally recalibrated his entire stance to compensate for the slight loss in eye speed.
That's incredible humility.
Yeah, he survived and extended his career precisely because he treated his own batting technique as an ongoing engineering project that required constant maintenance.
Which makes his eventual transition into life after the crease feel incredibly predetermined. He retires from international cricket in 2012. The ultimate defender finally leaves the field.
End of an era.
Truly. But instead of just taking a cushy commentary job or disappearing into retirement, he steps directly into high-impact developmental roles. He mentors the Rajasthan Royals in the IPL and takes over as head coach for the India Under-19 and India A teams.
He essentially transitioned from the player executing the blueprint to the architect drawing it up for the next generation.
But there is a massive paradox in professional sports when it comes to coaching. Usually, natural superstars are terrible teachers.
It's so true. Wayne Gretzky, Magic Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. If your talent is completely innate, if you just instinctively see a ball and hit it, it is nearly impossible to explain the mechanics of that to a 19-year-old kid struggling with their form.
Right, because you never had to think about it yourself.
Right. But because Dravid had to consciously grind, because he had to manually rebuild his stance and tweak his footwork throughout his career, doesn't that make him the perfect architect to actually teach young talent how to build their own games?
That is the exact differentiator. He understands the architecture of a successful innings, not just the feeling of it.
Yeah.
When he took over the Under-19 and India A setups, he didn't just run batting drills. He overhauled the entire pipeline.
Wow.
Yeah, he emphasized intense technical skill development, but more importantly, he taught these young athletes how to navigate failure.
Just like he had to.
Exactly. He taught them how to endure a grueling, hostile session without panicking. He instilled a level of mental discipline and sportsmanship that fundamentally shaped the modern era of Indian cricket.
He effectively took the knowledge forged in the fires of Kolkata and Lords and installed it into the hard drives of an entirely new generation of players.
And honestly, that contribution is arguably just as significant as his run tally. He ensured that his personal legacy of resilience would outlast his own playing days by embedding it into the structural culture of the national team.
So, what does this all mean? When you distill this deep dive down, Rahul Dravid's greatness transcends the incredible volume of runs he scored. His legacy is rooted in his unyielding technical precision and his profound ability to adapt.
Absolutely.
Whether that meant altering his footwork for a spinning pitch, hacking the ODI format through geometry and efficiency, or literally absorbing the brutal physical toll of wicket-keeping purely for team balance. He demonstrated that true mastery is egoless, and that resilience is simply the willingness to rebuild your technique every time you fail.
For you listening right now, whether you are managing a complex project at work, attempting to learn a difficult new skill, or just trying to navigate the daily grind, this mentality is a masterclass.
True.
It proves the value of focusing obsessively on the fundamentals. It is about embracing the long, unglamorous process of improvement instead of constantly chasing the dopamine hit of a quick win. And it is about prioritizing the stability of your team or your community over your own personal accolades.
You absolutely do not have to be the loudest or flashiest person in the room to be the most vital person in the room.
Well said.
But I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to explore on your own. We spent this entire deep dive analyzing his methodical, patient, highly grounded approach. But look at the state of sports and culture today.
Oh, it's frantic.
It is hyper-fast. Attention spans are shrinking by the second. Flashy, aggressive play absolutely dominates the media conversation and the social algorithms. T20 cricket demands instant fireworks from ball one. So if a young player with Dravid's slow-burn foundational philosophy walked out onto the pitch for their debut today, could they even survive the modern media scrutiny long enough to build their legacy?
That's a fascinating question.
Would this era simply refuse to wait for the wall to be built? Something to think about.